What's up, guys? I'm coming to you with a bit of an emergency impromptu update because the price, whilst it's sitting still currently, I want to take us through what has happened so far this week and what we may be looking at into the rest of this week. Because now we have FOMC out of the way, we have developing war news in Iran and Israel, and it could cause some sort of movement through to the weekend. So the reason why I wanted to do this video today, it's not normal that I do market updates on a Thursday, but I wanted to do it because Thursday is the day that we generally expect a midweek reversal. And so I want to go through the likelihood of that actually happening and what to look out for the rest of the week. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm Annie and this is Trade Travel Chill. We are usually smaller time frame day traders over here on the channel. However, we do look at macro because knowing what is going on in the macro environment gives you an edge when you are day trading. So that is always my focus. So let's go first of all to a smaller time frame chart for Bitcoin. And I just want to explain where I believe that we are at for the current week in the model that we trade over here on this channel. So you can see I've got a lot of things on my chart. It's because I am just tracking the updates of everything that has happened so far this week. And I am seeing a little bit of a trend. So what you can see here, first of all, is you'll see that I've identified two levels here. Now, if you know the system, we expect the price to move in phases of 3 before we have a trend reversal on smaller time frames. So far, we can see that we've had a high volume drop that started here on the dead gap zone in Tuesday. So this was our false move week beginning that took us out of the weekend range. Now, on Sunday, when I did an update, I did expect the false move to break to the upside. However, it did go higher than I expected. But that's okay. It's hard to get the price exactly right. As long as we get the direction, we're good. So the direction was correct on that false move breakout. There was another liquidity level up here, which I didn't mention on that video. And that's why we went up for that level. So the ones that I was concentrating on was a few around this cluster here, which we took out and then we continued. So that's why we went up to that level and then we heavily fell away, which caused a level 1 drop. This retracement here, this has been a typical behavior this week so far. We're leading into substantial news events. So we had the Bank of Japan policy rate on Tuesday. We have a bit of a false pump into the news event and then we have continuation to the downside. So you can see that happened here, created the initial high of the day for Tuesday and then we fell away for the level 2 drop. Now, towards the end of the US session on, what day was this now? Tuesday still. That's when, again, we had a bit of a pump into a news event. Now, that was the Genius Act vote. So we saw that, but again, weakness at the 50 EMA. And ever since then, we've really just been tracking sideways. So if you understand that we trade 3 levels, then what does that mean next? Does it mean there should be another level coming? Or are there signs on this chart that potentially we won't get level 3? That's what I want to talk about now. My target for a level 3 drop was this level here, which was the low of the day at about 103,300 to the low of the week at about 102,600. So that target came when the price was in this area here, okay? So I was expecting that as a potential target for the FOMC, if the FOMC caused a further drop, or if we were going to be really dramatic. Actually, that's not even true. At the start of the week, my target was potentially down below the low of the week, so into some of this liquidity down here. And if things got really bad, then the higher time frame liquidity was going to be the target at 99 to about 100,000 to 50. Now, as the week goes on, you reassess those targets because it takes a lot of volume to drop price into that zone, right? So if you see a level 2 play out, you have a look at, oh, how much have I got left? And what is the likelihood of us dropping down that far when there's only one more level left? And the thing with that is something very dramatic would have to happen. Now, again, on my Sunday video, I gave you a few scenarios for escalation and de-escalation and what to watch out for. Now, I believe some of that escalatative, I just made up a word, but some of that stuff has happened or is happening. What I'm hearing on the streets is that there was a cyber attack in Iran for I think the media, the news channels they lost internet or something like that. I know one of them was attacked. I'm not talking about that, but there has been a cyber. There is very strong opinions. I don't really believe it's been confirmed yet, but there are very strong opinions that America is currently making steps that lead people to believe they're about to potentially get involved. And that could be bad. Now, I was listening to a Twitter Spaces last night. I've been paying a lot of attention to them, where they bring in people who are in Iran, people who are in Israel. They bring in people from the military, political people. They bring in a whole bunch of people to share their opinions. So obviously none of this is like a confirmed source or anything. People are just sharing opinions. But last night there was a Spaces where people were making a lot of sense. And that's not normal. Like normally on those Twitter Spaces, there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of emotion, can get quite difficult to listen to. But on this one, there seemed to be a general consensus that it's looking like the US is putting things in place that lead to them potentially taking some action. However, how they believe it to be is that it's not likely that the US wants to go into a full blown out long-term war. They don't want to be involved in this for long-term. If they have to get involved in any way, it's likely that they will get involved with big force, fast, all of a sudden, do the damage and get out. For that reason, the reason I'm telling you this is because when I relate that to price action, that could be the warning when we have a look at the chart and I tell you that I don't think level 3 is in yet. It is possible that if there is that escalation and the US gets involved, then we may see that fast, dramatic move to the downside. So this is what I'm personally preparing for. They were saying on that Spaces that if it was going to happen, it would most likely happen within the next 96 hours. So that takes us into the weekend. And I've also mentioned on a previous video that when Israel makes sudden attacks, they like to do that on a weekend. Liquidity is going to be low if that happens. So these are the things that we have to watch out for. But always I'm aware of the news, but the chart tells me how to act, okay? So this is always my first priority. So when I look at the chart, I have to assess the positives and the negatives of what I'm seeing. So the negative is that I can only count 2 level drops and there should be 1 more to go, okay? The positive, however, is that after FOMC, we created a double bottom here, a multi-day double bottom. That's a positive because that's usually a trend reversal. However, we haven't gone anywhere since then. So that makes us neutral. So at the point of me filming this video right now, we should be neutral, especially because the price is between the EMAs. So let's talk about what has happened so far today now that FOMC is over, and how does the market feel about everything? They basically feel like nothing because they're neutral and price is sideways, okay? Now, we have a bank holiday in US today, so it's very unclear how the US session will react because volume can come from other places. So I'm at this point not sure whether we're going to have a normal US session or not. But what I can tell you so far is that UK, so far in the UK session, which at the time of me filming this, by the time it comes out, it's going to be much, much later. But at the time of me filming this, the UK session still has a couple of hours to go. But at this point in time, the UK session has not yet taken Asia's liquidity, not its high liquidity and not its low liquidity. So what you're looking at right here, if you're brand new to my channel, by the way, welcome if you are, be sure to hit the like button and hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And also if you've already found value and you are a regular watcher, be sure to hit that like button as well. So Asia's high is set here, okay? That's its job, is to set the initial high, and it has also set the initial low of today. Now, UK and US then comes in, and one of those sessions will break one side of that, and that will set the trend. So far, UK hasn't broken either side. Usually, if UK stays within the range of Asia, US will make the move. But we have the problem that the US has a bank holiday today. So it's going to be very tricky, I think, to trade today. If the setup looks obvious, obviously you trade it. But if it's not, understand why and understand what is happening. And there's always potentially another trade, another day, right? So for me, if we cannot get above and retest successfully the initial high of the day, I do think we will head down. I do think we're going to get our level 3 drop, and it might not be today. It might not even be tomorrow. It may happen over the weekend. I do think if there's going to be a level 3 drop, it will be a sudden news event reason why it happens. But that could also be the final damage. When you look at past wars, which, like I said, this is an unscripted and off the cuff video, so I don't have any prior things prepared, but usually you get the initial reaction, which is what we got. When was it? It was last week here when it all first happened. And then you get a second reaction. So it's possible that the second reaction is still coming. Look, long term, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin, but I do think that it would be better if we came to wipe out this lower liquidity before we headed up. And that's really what I'm looking out for right now. I'm looking for evidence that I'm going to get my level 3 that I'm expecting. What would change my mind on that would be getting back above yesterday's initial high. So getting back above 105,500 and successfully retesting that. If we fail to do that, then yeah, I think that level 3 is still coming. Let me just have a look at the other markets because they're going to give us an idea of what's going on as well. So what I'm looking at here is the S&P, first of all, it's in my area of interest on the daily time frame we'll use. Okay, so when you have a look at the S&P here, you can see 3 hits to the high, red vector candle. We've come into halfway of the zone, which is where we look for rejections. And at this point in time, we're starting to head out and move away from that zone. So it's not dramatic yet, but if this cannot get back above at least 50% of that vector candle right there, then we would expect a little bit more of a pullback on the S&P, potentially just to the 50 EMA. Doesn't necessarily have to be dramatic, but if we do get that, it is going to bring down crypto and it is going to give us that level 3 drop that we're looking for. The same with the Nasdaq. It actually recovered the entire area of interest. So the bullish scenario on both of them is getting back above that area of interest. So whilst they're in the zone, they're neutral, and we're looking again for evidence that we fall back below it and retest it. That's going to show us that it's weak. If it continues to consolidate, you start to expect that it's eventually going to break through. So again, we're neutral on everything right now. We're just awaiting something. And I think because we're awaiting, the longer we wait, probably the more sudden the next move is going to be. Crude oil is up massively, but when you look on a smaller time frame, say the 1 hour, we're basically consolidating at the highs. Okay, again, something we've got to watch carefully because of the war and the effect that's going to have on oil. And then gold as well. Let's have a look at gold on a higher time frame quickly. Again, this looks like an ascending triangle to me. Look, we've got this clear trend here. It's basically higher lows the entire time, and we're hitting up against this resistance. So that is what forms the ascending triangle. Big potential for that to break out to the upside. Again, would be news dependent. Okay, looking at the dominances, Bitcoin dominance is consolidating in the zone. So that, again, not good. So the longer we consolidate in, I shouldn't say not good, it's great. I'm a Bitcoin holder. So it's great if the dominance keeps going as long as the price keeps going with it. But when I say not great, it's on behalf of most of the people in crypto who really want alt season. That's what I mean when I say not great. I'm not in that basket, so I don't really care. But when we look at this, consolidating at around the 50% mark of the vector candle means that it's not giving up yet. So that the longer we consolidate there, the bigger the chance is actually going to break through into the upside. So if you want your alts to have a chance of survival, we need to be looking out for a rejection. We need to be looking for that to start coming back down below the area of interest. Stable coin dominance is just ranging, so really nothing to report there. And then the total, it's still bullish. The last time we had a look at this, I said we don't want to go lower than here if we want this to break out next, and that would be good for your altcoins. So far, it hasn't gone below there, but it is something we still need to watch daily because it's very close. Now, if you are trading this market and you want to capitalize on real price moves, not just wait around for alt season tweets, you need to be trading where the incentives are the best. And so right now we've partnered with Phemex to bring you a really amazing, generous offer. This is exclusive to Trade Travel Chill audience. So you'll qualify for a VIP lifetime 1 tier just for signing up. That gets you just a little bit over a 10% discount on your trading fees for life. And if you join using the link in the description of this video, you'll also get 20% cash back on your first net deposit. It's capped at $1,000. And you can also get trading bonuses based on your futures volume. So the steps to join this are in the description of this video. Make sure you check out the steps because there are 2 parts that you need to do. You need to first join using the link in the description, and then you have to go back to actually register to be part of this. And whilst you're at it, if you actually want to learn this system so that you can apply it to any asset, it's relevant in crypto, but it's also relevant in all other markets as well. It is a Forex strategy, so it doesn't come from crypto. Then consider joining us over at Trade Travel Chill. The website is in the description down below, and you can come, and the memberships include access to all of my trading education courses, access to daily updates, to live sessions as well as recordings depending on your membership option that you choose, and also access to all of the custom indicators that we create and that you see me use on this channel. Now, what I want to do next is I want to quickly go over Solana, and I also want to cover XRP. Now, the reason why they've got my attention is because they've been asked to refile some information for the ETF recently, and that could lead to some potential front running of these 2 cryptocurrencies. And that, for someone like us who are traders, we could potentially capitalize off that. Now, I'm going to do a different video on how I feel about these ETFs, but for now, I really just want to talk about their actual price action and where I think good levels to buy the dip could potentially be if we actually do get that level 3 drop to the downside. So I first want to have a look at Solana on the higher time frame. I just want to understand where we are, and I also want to have a look at the liquidity, because that's going to easily define where the buy dip zones are. You can see this big yellow zone here. That's where the current liquidity is to the downside. We have spiked into it a couple of times. It's down to about $138, but the range really is 144. So 138 to 144. If it holds there, look, when you look at this, it actually does look like it's consolidating after a move to the upside. So even with everything that's going on, it's not such a bad structure, I'm going to be honest with you, but I don't think it's done yet. So I think if we do come into this liquidity zone and you get strong buys out of it, you get nice big wicks, hammer, like this candle right here, something like that could make it a good buy zone if you are someone who's a long-term holder of Solana. But if you don't, be very careful because there is a flip side to this as well. The only reason I'm saying could be a buy is because of the fact that people will be bullish now because of the information refiling on the ETF, and therefore they take that as a sign that, oh, that means it's likely to get approved. They just want this other thing. But we do have a lower high after an M formation here. So you have to be very careful. Have your zone of where you would ideally like to buy, but you got to wait for the final confirmation before you pull the trigger, because it's also very possible that market makers send price down, they take that liquidity and then they send it down further to get more liquidity, because more liquidity will build as we hit zones. But yeah, always wait for final confirmation, but that's what I would be looking out for on Solana on the macro. So that means when I go down to a lower time frame, it starts to make more sense. So this is a 4-hour time frame, and now you can see why there is liquidity here, right? It's a 4-hour support level. So a lot of people would be buying off this support. So it's critical that Solana holds this support if we're to see more upside. And I do think you've got time to buy in on this one. And it may happen after a final damage move if the weekend does turn out to be bearish. But that's the zone I'll be looking to act if I get my confirmation anyway. So now let's have a look at the same thing with XRP. I want to have a look where the liquidity is on XRP on a higher time frame as well. And again, actually, I did do this exercise just for my own charting last night, and I did happen to notice that many altcoins have quite large liquidity, and when you zoom out to the 4-hour time frame, that liquidity is around their 4-hour support levels. So if you are somebody who wants to buy dips on alts, and I'm not making that recommendation, but if you are someone who wants to do that, that is where I would start charting, marking my levels and setting alerts, knowing that there is quite a lot of liquidity at most altcoins 4-hour support level. And then once your alert goes off, you can make a manual decision from there. For me, ideally with XRP, we can see there's been a few spikes below its 4-hour support, and then it's reclaimed it, but it's reclaiming it and creating lower highs. Okay. At the same time as doing that, it is also creating higher lows. So it's essentially just in a symmetrical triangle. So that's a continuation pattern. And if the trend was bullish prior to the triangle, the continuation should be to the upside. Now, again, I believe the ETF approval is expected in July. So this could be an accumulation heading into that news. So if you were somebody who wanted to speculate on that, then again, your zone is probably somewhere around here between 1.9 to about $2, say $2.10. But you can see the XRP is accumulating in the pointy end of that higher time frame triangle. So a breakout really looks imminent on this. And I think the only thing that would wreck that, again, would be war escalation. So the invalidation then would be below that liquidity. That's where you'd be hands off, don't do it yet, wait a little bit longer. But for as long as this daily time frame triangle holds, if you're lucky enough to get a dip into this liquidity zone, I think that would be a good buy, pending getting strong buy signals out of the zone. All right, don't forget, if you need further assistance about knowing when to actually pull the trigger, come and join us inside of TTC. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video.